I'm Ron Wooten-Green. For about 10 years, I worked as a hospice chaplain. In the process, I worked with about 1,000 people who were dying and their families. In my book, When the Dying Speak, How to Listen to and Learn from Those Facing Death, is, among other things, a collection of some of the stories of the families, the people that I worked with. But basically, it's a book about what we call the symbolic language of the dying, which involves like deathbed visions, near-death experience, nearing death awareness. And tonight, I would like to share with you a piece from the book entitled, Been There and Done That. As I drove through the undulating hills and rich farmland toward a small town in southwest Iowa, I tried to imagine what Val would be like. I had heard from our nurse that the patient was a character, one of a kind. A woman who had a special command of, as the nurse said, colorful language. She had been a truck driver long before women were accepted in the profession and before the interstate highways were built. Mrs. Val Randolph, by definition, had to be tough. But I may have been lulled into defensiveness by the soft, almost lilting sound of her granddaughter's voice when I called to make an appointment. She would love to meet you any old time, Lori said in a very southern drawl, better than I could mimic. And now, as I enter her home, Val, our patient, asks, "What do you want?" And in defense, I explain, well, you see, I'm just here to get to know you. And Lori, her granddaughter, pipes in and says, "Grandma, you remember? The chaplain called and you said it was okay for him to come. You agreed to see him." Lori intervenes with a skill that I think she's honed to a fine skill over the years with her grandmother. Val is a retired person, or Lori is a refined person, I should say, about 40 years old. She's attractively attired, with sparkling eyes, a brunette with her hair done up in pigtails, and she is so sure in her demeanor and sincere in her approach and seemingly secure in who she is in this world. And I respond to Mrs. Randolph. I say, I don't want anything other than just to meet you. As Lori said, I'm here just to get to know you. No. No minister ever walked across the threshold of that door without wanting money, and I want to know what you want. Mrs. Randolph is tethered to an oxidizer. It sits on the dinette table with her. Her breathing is labored, even with the assistance of extra oxygen. She appears to be of the same lithesome build as her granddaughter, but with a considerably harsher approach to life. Here is a person who has graduated from the School of Hard Knocks. She's a quick judge of character, and I'm in her court. Well, I'm not a real minister, I say. I'm just a hospice chaplain. she responds by saying, with a boisterous laugh, and saying, well, you just take a seat right there, young man. How's about a beer? You don't know how much I would like a beer, but I can't really drink while I'm working, I say. A smile spreads across her face. Well, since you're not a real minister, I'm not offering you a real beer. How's about a Sharps? A Sharps. Non-alcoholic beer. Okay? I said, I'll take it. So the picture is coming into focus real well now. Mrs. Randolph, among other things, is a person who enjoys putting strangers on defense, putting them to the test, and this is beginning to feel more like a game, really, than a rigorous exam. I'm told that you've been an over-the-roader for many years. I would like to know how that was for you, especially how it is now to be cooped up in here after being free to travel far and wide for so long, I say. Well, first of all, young fella, keep in mind I was about 55 at the time, you're one of the few folks who ever used that term, other than us over-the-roaders. But to answer your question, I hate this shit. Do you hear me? I hate it. Suddenly she slams her fist on the table. The beer can jumps off the table. She grabs it midair, just like my Aunt Lula used to snatch flies. And I think that this whole thing was set up just for me. But this is the run I have to make now, she says. You know, I drove in and out of many terminals in my day. Now they tell me I'm it. Taking another sip of beer, she looks over at me with a go ahead and ask look. They tell you you're it? Yeah, then I'm terminal. But I got one more ride to do, one more run, one more way station to check into before I get to the big terminal. That trip is coming up real soon, yep, real soon. Taking another sip of beer, she says, real soon, but I'm in no damn hurry. I know the road will be bumpy, full of potholes, so I can wait for the dispatcher to call me in. Suppose the great dispatcher called you in, I ask, somewhat hesitantly for effect. Well, hell, you don't got much choice. When the dispatcher says go, you get your ass in the rig and you go. You mean you wouldn't even bargain for a delay, I ask? Listen, Sonny, I talked myself out of a few runs in my day, but this time is just plain different. Real different. I'm not talking myself out of this one. No way. I don't have the energy to bargain, argue, or plead. In fact, it don't seem like such a bad deal. I know the route pretty well. Most days lately I just want to get on with it. There's something about what she is saying that I find awfully intriguing. Actually, it's not what she is saying that is so beguiling. It is what she's not saying. Mrs. Randolph, just call me Val, will you? Val, I'm hearing and seeing a person who's very much at peace with herself, her life, and with the trip ahead of her. I say, moving my chair slightly closer to her. I mean, you seem very content and ready to go whenever the great dispatcher says it's time to hit the road. I hope you don't take that for granted. Not everyone is as accepting of the final run as you are. How do you account for that? She doesn't hesitate at all, but looks me straight in the eyes and says, well, I'll tell you what, I should be okay with it, because I've been there and done that. Val turns silent and reflective, and I decide to see where the silence leads us. I become gradually aware of the sounds of silence. The oxidizer's low roar, the air conditioner's rattle and whir. Lori's ceased fire with the dirty dishes. Lori, I realize, has been listening in all this time. She too is eager to hear how her grandmother has been there and done that. You see, Val continues, some years ago, many years ago, I was on the operating table when things suddenly weren't going well. It was as if I were above the table. I was looking down at myself. I could hear the doctors and nurses talking about me. I knew it was not good. One doctor was frantic. We're losing her. We're losing her. God damn it. Get in here. Bring her back. Bring her back. Oh, shit. And I could tell that one of the nurses was crying. Next thing I know, I'm being drawn through this tunnel-like thing when everything goes black for a moment, followed by a light that gets brighter and brighter, a soft and warm light. Soon I see these beautiful palace-like buildings and this wonderful, wonderful, inviting garden. Damn, it was so peaceful. Val stops her retelling of this near-death experience. She is sitting quietly and tears are rolling down her cheeks. Why did you come back, I ask. Well, that's the part that really sucks. This voice told me to go back. You've got more work to do, the voice said. I know it was God's voice. I didn't see him. Shit, I didn't see anybody. Just the pastor. So I came back. And Val hangs her head and shakes it from side to side. Why do you say coming back sucks? Because it is one thing to be told that I had more work to do, but the voice neglected to tell me what it was I had to do. And I still don't know. It has always pissed me off. I mean, do I have one more floor to clean? And then I've done what I have to do. What is it that I have to do before I can go back and stay there permanently? I didn't get it then, and I don't get it now. Grandma, when did that happen? Lori comes to the table and pulls up a chair. I never heard this story before. Wow. Well, girl, not everyone thinks it's a wow. When I told one of the nurses, she told me it was the anesthesia, just a hallucination. She laughed and walked away. The doctor, however, told me I did come very close to death. When I told him what I heard him say and how he looked, and that the nurse was crying, his eyes got red. He turned a little pale and sat down on the edge of my bed. Val sits quietly for a moment, as if trying to remember something. When was it? Well, I don't recall month, date, and year. It was a long time ago. But I do remember one thing. It was while I was recuperating at home, my mother told me she was pregnant. I remember now. I had just gotten into bed after the trip from the hospital. She had never, not once, come to see me at the hospital, and I was in there for 3 weeks. Not once had she even stopped by the house to see how her father, your grandfather, was doing. But when I was exhausted to the core, she comes in and says, I'm going to have a baby. Your near-death experience was somewhere around 42 years ago, Grandma. I'm 41. And you took me in after I was born. That's right. There was no way that daughter of mine could have raised you properly. Not sure we did either, but you sure turned out mighty fine. Just wish you could have had a decent mother and father. Turning to me now, Val looks puzzled. I sure wish the Lord had been a little clearer about what I was supposed to do. How is one to figure these things out? I'm not sure, Val, but it sounds to me like the Lord probably knew your daughter was pregnant. God most likely knew, as you did, that Lori's mother could not do a proper job of nurturing. Is it not possible that the Lord sent you back to care for Lori? Lori begins to cry and embraces her grandmother. Val, nodding her head and sobbing, says, I never thought of that. It was right in front of me. 1 month later, Val went gently into the night. The grandmother called in her rig. She was ready and unafraid, having been there and done that before. Thank you.